boardroom. This is the business of esports. As the prophet of esports, I rely on trustworthy and meaningful data every day. Data from our research partner, YouGov, offers the most complete view of esports fans and gamers in the world, providing context to who they are, what they think, the brands they buy, and things they do. YouGov's connected insights and research services inform strategy at every level. If you're a team, a brand, agency, or rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. Their partners measure and maximize ROI and are telling compelling stories with data. Visit yougov.com/gaming-esports to learn more. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports weekly news show / after podcast show. I am Paul Dewalibi. I'm joined today by my friends and co-hosts, Jeff the Juice Cohen, Jimmy Barada, Lindsay the Boss Poss. For those of you who are new to this weekly news show, welcome. What we do here is we cover all the news, all the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week that we don't get to cover in the podcast, that we don't have time to cover in the podcast. And best of all, we get to do it live with you guys. You get to ask questions, get in our faces. We still look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We still dissect and analyze the business implications of everything happening in the industry. If you're a regular here, welcome back. We really appreciate you guys coming every week. If you're new here, we encourage you to participate. You don't have to. I know literally 90% of you lurk, and that's okay too. But we encourage you to participate. It's a safe space, and we love having you guys here. So how are you guys doing this week? Lindsay?
I'm doing great. I'm having a good week. Last week was a bit of a recovery week after our long trips and vacations, and it's finally getting cold here, so good reason to stay inside and hang out.
Everyone amazed at all the, like, who here just lost it this week with Roblox not working? Who here was desperate to play Roblox, and it was just, we are going to talk about this, but Jeff, I know you were trying to play Roblox.
Yeah, I mean, I am of the age and demographic of a typical Roblox user, and I am an avid fan. I was, just so angry. I had to go outside and talk to people in the real world.
So did none of you dress up as gaming-related things for Halloween?
I was David Rose from Schitt's Creek, and my fiance was Alexis, and it was a big hit at a lot of our parties. For those of you that watch Schitt's Creek on Netflix, or I can't remember which Canadian broadcasting station it's on, but it's
Jimmy, this is not gaming content?
It's not gaming content.
What are you doing?
Netflix
Didn't you dress
is
up
coming
as
out
Star
with
Wars
gaming
as well?
programming, so it's
I know, Jimmy.
coming.
You really did Halloween well this year.
We did have a costume change and a Star Wars appearance as well.
Yeah,
yes.
that was amazing.
I'm curious if anyone in our chat did anything gaming related for Halloween or had a good gaming cosplay or Halloween costume. I always appreciate those. The rest I almost never get. I never figure out who people are dressed up as. Wani says, I can't believe I came here even though I am not going to get any extra credit. Wani, welcome. Six Cannon says, you know what I've been curious about? What kind of headset the Juice uses? Six Cannon, let me just give you some advice. Don't take tech advice from the Juice. So
That's correct. That is correct.
What kind of headset is it, Jeff?
I doubt he knows.
My wife got it. It's a Plantronics. It's a great brand. Strongly recommend.
It's one of my favorite things. It looks straight out of Mission Control in the 90s.
Wani says, I guess because of Lindsay. I mean, everyone's here because of Lindsay. Well, I don't know why we ever think otherwise. Six Cannon says, Mario Party with my family. That's cool. Josh, that's did you all like dress up as characters from Mario Party? Because I'm kind of curious to see that. That must have been fun. All right, guys. Podcast this week. Let me tease it first, and then we'll jump into some news. We had Doron Neer, who is the co-founder of Stream Elements, on the podcast this week. And for those of you who don't know, Stream Elements just recently raised $100 million from investors, including why is it escaping me? Help me out, Jimmy. Including SoftBank. Sorry.
Yes.
And so great conversation around, where they're taking this business now that they've raised $100 million from, a who's who of investors, including SoftBank, and Stream Elements. I would argue one of the foremost picks and shovels kind of plays in the gaming world. So really interesting conversation there. Super smart guy, hardcore gamer at his core too, and just very passionate. And I will plug, by the way, because I think it's a great opportunity. They are hiring a ton of people right now post this raise. And so if anyone in our chat, if anyone watching this is, looking for something, I encourage them to go check out Stream Elements website. I think they have a jobs section or something. But they are trying to hire a lot of people right now. So very interesting. Wani says, I was Russell from Up and won a $150 Amazon gift card in an office costume party. Kind of have to send photos now. I mean, if it was a prize winning costume. Robert says, hello. Hey, Robert. So that's the podcast, guys, for tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. It's a great episode. Lots of learnings, lots of interesting insight from Stream Element. So let's jump into some news, guys. You want to talk about the news today? Some big stories? Do we want to start with something like major or?
I like to ease into it, but it's whatever you guys want.
Ease into it.
I think Jeff wants to go hard.
I don't know.
Hard in
I'm
the
just
paint.
excited.
Jeff's always the only one that's like ready from the jump.
Okay,
Like,
can we
what
talk
are you-
about Microsoft? Because Microsoft was in the news, and I thought this was an interesting article only because it felt. I don't know. You guys tell me how you feel about this article. The headline here: Microsoft is planning 3D metaverse apps for Xbox and gaming, and basically they have someone from Microsoft, including the CEO here, who's quoted saying, "You can absolutely expect us to do things in gaming. If you take Halo as a game, it is a metaverse. Minecraft is a metaverse, and so is Flight Sim. In some sense, they're 2D today, and the question is, can you now take that to a full 3D world? And we absolutely plan to do so." So Satya Nadella says they have plans to focus on gaming for the metaverse with Xbox. They also just announced, and maybe this changes your feelings, Microsoft Teams metaverse for meetings. Jeff, I already see you shaking your heads. So, Microsoft has dabbled with some VR in the past. They've dabbled with some AR in the past. They had HoloLens. Satya is now coming out and saying, hey, we're basically already doing metaverse stuff and we're going to do more of it. I'm paraphrasing. Knee-jerk reaction to Facebook here, guys, or you think genuine, well thought out strategy from Microsoft?
Well, that was a Freudian slip you just had saying Facebook. But it's, I mean, we talk about this now it's funny how quickly metaverse has just become, I feel like we were a few months early about joking about how big of a buzzword it is. And now it's like, it's not even funny anymore, just how every company says they're creating a metaverse. On his first point about the games being metaverses, I sort of agree. I mean, I think there is no good definition of a metaverse. I think loosely, I agree with him. I mean, if you think of metaverse as like a virtual world that you kind of go in and it's immersive and you have a character, an avatar, and it kind of, you personalize that and you sort of spend time and money and socialize in a digital world. That's sort of how I think of metaverse. I know that's not the metaverse that we're sort of all shooting for down the line, but that's what I kind of the building blocks of when I define a metaverse, like how I'm thinking about it today. With that definition, I do think that those are metaverses, which has kind of been something I've been pounding the drum on for a while, where I'm like, all of these games are sort of metaverses. Like GTA is a metaverse. Like these games are metaverses. But I think when you use that definition, it kind of does water it down a bit compared to sort of what people I think are expecting when they talk about metaverse. I sort of snickered when you talked about Microsoft Teams, just because Microsoft Teams like sucks so much. And if there was like one communication software app I would not want to be sort of living in their digital world, I think it would probably be Microsoft Teams. So
definitely judge people by their preferred choice of meeting platform.
I use Google Meet, so I'm not like any better, but like it's better than Microsoft Teams, I think.
It is better. Is anyone sort of think this was just pure, again, PR marketing stunt, or do you think we see a world, because remember last week we talked about Microsoft and Satya being part of his comp being tied to Xbox Game Pass subscriptions, right? At what point do we see something metaverse related sort of being a metric that Satya is judged on, or ever, right? Like fundamentally, do we think this is just marketing, or do we think there's genuine strategic kind of prioritization being pushed here?
I think the strategy is those conversations are now happening, right? Because if it was already happening, then there would be something substantive in that article. It's very knee-jerky. That doesn't mean that there's not something in discussion, right, or being developed, but this isn't the 10,000 employee hire in a new facility and here's our rollout plan that we just saw. So maybe we're spoiled in that sense. To Jeff's point, the metaverse being created, it really could be any of these things, all of these things, whatever we envision. Microsoft is a great company to kind of throw its hat in the ring and kind of help define that. And it has the titles that will contribute to what that metaverse looks like. But I just, you read this and you're like, cool, okay. Like, Nike's announcement was more substantive than this one, with their NFTs and their digital clothing that their Nike's play for the metaverse, I thought was much stronger than what we're reading here, which is funny because that's an apparel company and you would expect it to be reversed, right? With someone like Microsoft. So that's not to say we're not going to see something bigger and more detailed from Microsoft. I totally agree with you, Paul, that in terms of CEO compensation, that'll be a fair way to monitor performance and certain future milestones as this takes the forefront of the industry, for the next 10 plus years, foreseeable future. But what is it? Like, what are we talking? We're not talking about anything. This is like a nothing article. It's a filler.
Well, I want to read some of the comments here because I think some of them are quite poignant. One, he says, "I'm going to open the restaurant called Metaverse, only take NFT as a payment. Of course, the food will be virtual as well." Wani, this is genius. Don't give away these good ideas like this. You should have already done this. I don't know what you're waiting for. Chris says, "Took a pandemic to teach people how to use Zoom. Now we all have to plug into the metaverse. # learning curve." It'll be interesting to see if the pandemic can get us to that metaverse. Maybe it gets us all the way. And if you believe Microsoft's press release here, fundamentally this article, Teams is basically a metaverse. So we're already there. Matthew says this seems very Epic Games, a knee-jerk reaction to a big company with a half-assed attempt to go toe-to-toe with them. Matt, I agree completely. It's Microsoft, right? Like, it didn't have to be half-assed or knee-jerk or any of it. They have enough resources and, they have enough there that they could have made a real response. Matt says, when did Tim Sweeney start working at Microsoft? Robert's comment here I thought was very interesting because this is sort of what I was getting at. Microsoft have been a pioneer in the space for a while. Their holoportation team have been more endemic to metaverse than many newer technologies. WebUC-based Animojis does have foundation of tech interoperability. Do you agree that each of these moves are another step towards convergence? I'm going to answer this question. I want to put it to you guys, but also let me ask a tangential or related question here, which is Microsoft does have a lot of tech that they could have leaned on in an article like this, of which almost none was mentioned, right? Like the real stuff that they have been building or have built that could be metaverse related was not mentioned. Instead of, it was just like, well, we already have Halo and Teams, and so like these are already metaverses, as opposed to saying, hey, you know, we're investing millions of dollars more into, you know, HoloLens, and we'll see where that goes. Any guesses why they didn't go down this path, to Robert's point of talking about some of the technologies that have made Microsoft maybe more endemic to metaverse than anyone else?
I mean, that could go back to your PR point and trying to get something out as Facebook is making this huge announcement. But to be honest, Microsoft's never been kind of a company to send out these types of knee-jerk reactions like this. They've been way more of a kind of behind the scenes, build the tech and let it sell kind of company. So I don't know that I see this as a PR move. Quite frankly, I'm a little bit puzzled by it when I look at it from that aspect. So hopefully it's more so a sign of that they're going to announce something bigger that they're really actually excited about. And they're just trying to get early attention on it. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
What was
to
this
Rob,
involved?
sorry,
Like,
go ahead, Jay.
what was the article? Was it like was this a response to a question? Because it's not like a press release saying like, "Hey guys, we already have a metaverse." Wasn't it like an interview?
It was.
And
No, it was this, I don't know if
release?
it came from a press release, but
I thought it was like an interview.
Microsoft is planning, the headline is Microsoft's planning 3D metaverse apps for Xbox and gaming. There was this was not out of some interview.
That was my first thought too, Jeff, was like, is this just a,
I
is
guess
that
I'd
the
like
reason
to.
why it's not
Yeah,
more
I guess I'd
detailed
like to
because
see
of the
the
context?
source doc, like the actual press release. Now, to be fair, like the headline, I mean, the quote we kind of pulled out that we all honed in on was one about Microsoft Teams, and then also about talking about, hey, Flight Simulator and all these things, Minecraft are already metaverses. Now, them talking about doing 3D, if you can go back, 3D. What was the actual headline? So, like, you know, them doing 3D metaverse apps like that is a headline, is it not? Like,
Yeah,
3D apps for Xbox is
just
sort
feels
of
a bit fluffy,
metaversey.
right? If anything, I kind of like this announcement better, which was, you know, Teams 3D avatars, which you could argue is sort of metaverse-ish, right? And
definitely
I could
cooler.
see a lot of people using a 3D avatar when they don't want to have to get dressed up and put makeup on or do whatever else to be on camera.
Like,
We could do the entire show in avatars. This is a
talked
way
about that
cooler.
before.
This is a way cooler thing.
but wouldn't
Um,
doing 3D game, like immersive games, like wouldn't that be a story? Like, why is that not?
It just seems like a little fluffy. Games are already 3D in the sense that the graphics are 3D, but you know, they made the point it's still a 2D experience. You're looking at a screen. It's nothing concrete, right? Fundamentally, it didn't feel like anything concrete. It was just like, hey, we're going to be working on this. To Robert's point, though, I just want to come back to this question. He says, do you agree that each of these moves are another step towards convergence? I think absolutely yes. The struggle with Microsoft is they're very siloed, right? They have always struggled to bridge hardware and software. And, you know, it took Surface 10 years now. How long has it been for Surface devices to really sort of start producing good, cohesive kind of hardware and software that works together well? I just think Microsoft's always going to struggle with a bit of a siloed organization, and we'll see if they can take all these technologies from their different sort of divisions and make it work to build this metaverse. But they have a lot of the building blocks, guys, right? They have all the game developers. They have the hardware in HoloLens and other things. They have the operating systems, right? They have the networking stuff. They have they have a lot of the bits and pieces.
But that's why the announcement is like nothing, because we already know all of this, and all they're saying is reminding us that they've been in this space and that they have all of these things. So that's my sole the fault I find with it is just it's kind of reiterating and what we already know or what we can already piece together. There's nothing, again, there's no allocation, there's no budget or branch development or anything. They're just like, oh yeah, we've already been pioneering that space for a long time now.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, we'll credit you for that, you know, cool.
Six Cannon says, how did we accidentally skip VTubers for social spaces and into the professional workspace? I mean, well, there's VR chat, Josh. I mean, we didn't really skip it for social spaces, but you're right. That's like an obvious, like Discord integration, I feel like, right? Discord should have a super easy kind of click a button and have your 3D avatar as opposed to yourself or something like that. But in the professional workspace, I definitely see the benefits, quite obvious benefits, actually. Julia says, although that may be weird, by the way, if your avatar in Teams ends up looking nothing like you and you meet sort of your coworker for the first time.
That reminds me of have you guys read about tall Zoom? Like people trying to guess other people's heights on Zoom and say
So
Really?
funny.
tall on Zoom, and in real life they're
That's
short.
like the first thing I've said with numerous people that I've met, online. Then we finally meet at these conferences, and everyone's like, "Shorter or taller? Am I shorter or taller than what you thought?" It's really funny.
Julie says, did any Facebook specific products launch after the Meta announcement? It's a good question. I don't think so. I did not see any. In beta, maybe? It's an excellent question. I actually don't think so. I don't know if someone can take a quick look, but
I mean, I guess
they've
Microsoft.
Julia,
looks like
they've
they had a
rebranded,
conference.
right? Now all the apps say from Meta. Supposedly, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, etc., all say from Meta. But I don't think any new products have launched.
The opposite. Didn't they archive their facial recognition software? I read about that this week. The thing that would let you tag faces and photos and things. That was something Facebook got rid of. And it was the opposite of what Julia's asking.
Matt says maybe they had a long-term plan, but were forced to rush it out because Facebook beat them to the punch. Classic Silicon Valley. It's possible, Matt. I don't know if Microsoft would have ever done anything so drastic as a rebrand, though. I just don't see it from Microsoft, but maybe I'm wrong. Julia says agreed with Jimmy. Six Candid says, yeah, specifically for common apps like Discord and maybe other similar apps as a side feature. Yeah, it's actually remarkably difficult to get good like VTuber kind of stuff going on. You need a good webcam, but you also need hand tracking stuff like a Leap or something like that. The cam only tracking is also not that great. Like if you want really good, you need a suit and the whole bit. The tech is just not there yet, I think, for total widespread applications, but sort of good enough. Like, will it track my smile and my facial expressions? Probably good enough for a Teams or something like that. Matt says maybe not a rebrand, but a metaverse-like entry point. I have a funny feeling we're going to see it from Microsoft at some point. Some more cohesive branding and strategy. Do you guys think that?
Oh, yeah. I think that I'm sure that this project is more in the works than this article leads on, and I'm curious to see what they have going. But like I said, Microsoft has always been like taking kind of a quiet approach, like let the tech speak for itself, I feel like. So I don't know that they'll necessarily pivot to an entire rebrand. I just think a product will be introduced and it'll maybe start to take over the market a little bit. As a side note, did you all see that Facebook is no longer requiring a Facebook account to log into Oculus? So I
thought they said that was coming. Has it happened yet? Because that was one change I was very much against.
Against?
Yeah, I love the business, idea behind it, but as an Oculus user, I hated it.
Oh, yeah. So you're happy that they changed it back to not having a Facebook account, is what you're saying.
I mean, I understand the business strategy behind it, but it was one of those things that I felt like they alienated a good chunk of their user base for no really good reason.
Yeah, well, I think what it does too is separate. I mean, it helps them in their rebrand separate out their metaverse stuff from the social network itself. I think Microsoft is already starting from higher ground on that because they've already built an entire company that has several different verticals where they can.
Doesn't that really kneecap them in terms of advertising and targeting? Like the whole beauty of it would have been if you could connect your Facebook page where they already know so much about you with, your metaverse.
It's still a login option. It's just not necessary.
And they still have their data on the Oculus side, right? Like your Oculus account was still data.
Yeah, but you're gonna have a lot less data in your Oculus. Like people have poured years and years of quizzes and all this garbage that's basically, giving Facebook all this, data that obviously they can sell.
Jimmy, you were going to say something?
I was just gonna say, I never understood why I couldn't OAuth into Facebook or these other apps through like my Gmail or any other service that I like to use. I mean, for me, it was about creating a new account, with these people and a new password that I had to remember. If someone lets me log in and link my Gmail through that, or I mean, there's other, you could do it through Microsoft, your Microsoft account. That's like a no-brainer, and it's like the easiest thing to do. And so I don't know, when I saw what we were talking about this with Oculus, I just never understood why I couldn't just do it through my Gmail. Like, why don't they support that? Because for me, that's a roadblock.
Well, they want to own the user, right? They want to own the user.
I get that.
I think the more interesting
Facebook, a lot of
discussion.
apps will let you log in with Facebook, right? And Google.
That's
I think
my
the more
point.
interesting discussion is, will we see a Meta account now, right? That you will be able to create a new Meta account or something like that. And how do they tie that into existing Facebook accounts? I also think it's interesting that when they made the Oculus change, that like enforced Facebook logins, that wasn't that long ago, guys, right? Which tells me that this whole Meta thing has not been in the works for like 2 years, right? This has been in the works for 2 months, maybe.
That was my thought when I read the Oculus thing and switching it back.
Yeah, right. Like you don't make one change and then go back on it 2 months later, unless you had been thinking about this the entire time, right? If you had Meta in mind the entire time, I don't think, Jimmy, you're smiling.
Oh, I was like, oh, unless you're Google, but like,
That's true.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's move on. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about Riot here. Riot in the news. I thought this Washington Post headline was just very catchy. It says, League of Legends esports still hasn't turned a profit. That's okay, says Riot. Without diving into this article, because it's a pretty good article and pretty in depth. Riot's not making money on esports, right? Who here thinks, because I think there's two camps, right? There's the camp of esports need to be a profit center. And there's a camp of esports are a marketing expense, essentially, and they need to drive more players and more spending in our game, right? And there's sort of maybe some gray area in between or some level of mix or hybrid in between. But fundamentally, I think all esports fall into one of these two categories. Riot is clearly okay with not turning a profit. Who here thinks this is the wrong strategy, the right strategy? I'm curious, right? It's the first time Riot's come out and said, we don't care if we don't make money on esports. Lindsay, any thoughts?
I'm sure that the Prophet has some opinions on not making profit.
I do.
It's so hard to tell because we're not talking about like a small developer. We're talking about companies that have money. So it's like, what's the return on starting these leagues and keeping up with these leagues? It's hard for me because I still feel as if the leagues are missing the star power. So it's almost like to me, it's like a chicken and egg problem. It's like, oh, if the leagues had star power, then it'd be totally worth the marketing expense. But also if they had star power, it probably would be making money. So I just don't know that the right ingredients have been put forward for a successful esports play, in which I've been like, it makes sense to waste money on this because it's great marketing, or it makes sense to make money off of this, or it makes sense because it's making money. I still feel like we're in limbo a little bit with some of the stuff that's been put forward.
Keep in mind, this article is not saying no one's making money, right?
Yeah,
it says Riot's not making money.
We are talking about, one of the biggest publishers and that hosts some of the biggest.
But meaning some of the League of Legends teams may be making money, right? We don't. This article is very specific in that they're talking about Riot, the company, as the provider and of the league and as the architect of the league, is not making a profit on the league, and they're okay with it.
But to Lindsay's point, it's still half a story, right? Because we don't know if that's the league esports is funneling business for in-game purchasable items in league for the casual gamer, right? Maybe it's just a market, like she said, maybe it's just a marketing vehicle where all of their other users see their favorite gamers playing, buying this in-game item, and then they want to buy it too. And for Riot, for Red Bull, it makes sense to field, this car because we know we're going to sell more drinks, right? And maybe the car is not profitable, but we're going to make up for it on the other side. I'm only enhancing Lindsay's point in that we don't know what type of business vehicle the esports league is for Riot. I also want to know how they're what they're measuring in terms of, do they consider profit just the team buy-in, that $10 million, what have you, for the league spot? I mean, it's just hard for me to fathom that with not just with all these teams that are being fielded, but then the sponsors that they're getting, the seats and the ticket revenue for the live events minus, the last 2 years. It's just crazy to me to think that it's not turning a profit. But again, it just doesn't seem like this one vertical to them needs to be profitable to have a profitable business if it's driving revenue somewhere else. We don't know the second half of that story, so I just feel like it's hard to say that this is okay or not. It's half a story.
I think my view, and you guys may be surprised, this Riot not being profitable on League of Legends esports is the crux of the genius behind League of Legends esports. It's single-handedly what Riot gets that Activision Blizzard and Bobby Kotick don't get whatsoever, are completely ignorant about. And that is fundamentally the success of League of Legends, I think in large part has been driven by the competitive scene, right? You have 100 million plus people watch League of Legends World Championships. Today you have 180 million League of Legends players, right? These people spend, and the competitive scene encourages them to spend, encourages them to unlock new heroes, and encourages all these kind of good things for the business. And I think Riot was really smart, and I don't know if this was very purposeful internally. I suspect it was, to say, we don't care if we make money here, right, as a company. What we care is that the ecosystem we build, the esports ecosystem, thrives, survives, does well, right? And it wasn't about, because I think, and I'm sure all of you would agree, Riot could have gone out and sold $50 million league spots. Does anyone disagree with that? That they could be charging $50 million for a league spot and probably would have had 10 to 20 buyers, no questions asked. Instead, what's the spot in league going for these days, right? 10 to 15 million kind of range, directly from Riot at least. And so I think they've made a conscious decision to say, we don't need this to be a profit center. Instead, we want the owners to make money, the teams to make money, the players to make money, right? The sponsors to make money, that the health of the ecosystem comes before them making a direct profit from esports there. And instead focus on how does the esports scene help them drive profit elsewhere. I think it's a really mature decision. It's really brilliant. Activision Blizzard fundamentally does not understand this, and it's why League esports have succeeded and Activision Blizzard esports have failed. I think this is the crux of it, other than the people and some of the other issues. But like this, to me, this is the core of the issue. I don't know if anyone.
Well, I think you're right. I mean,
or...
but there are other I don't think it's. I would like to see, what I would like to understand a little bit more is like, this is sort of a clickbaity headline and like a very easy thing for them to throw around. Like, I would like to understand why it's not profitable. Like, is it, where is the money being spent? Because to Jimmy's point, there is a lot of money coming in, between the team, not the team sales, between like the sponsorships, the streaming rights, all that. Like, where is the money going? And I'm not doubting that this is a bad business practice. Like Riot, there are plenty of studies out there that show, having a vibrant esports scene is good marketing. You bring players in, you bring the casual players in, as Jimmy said, more payer penetration. Like Riot Games is making more money because their League of Legends scene and their competitive esports scene is big. So the enterprise overall is doing better. So I'm fine with that as a business strategy. But just as someone who, all of us who work in the esports ecosystem, I'd like to understand where the money in the value chain is going. Just out of curiosity, right? Because it is doesn't make me feel great that they're not making money, unless it's like, hey, we could be making money if tomorrow we flipped XYZ switch And, we didn't do this in big stadiums. We instead did it in, just totally making up an example. We did it here, or we didn't pay the players this, we paid them this, we'd be making tens of millions. Like, I just want to understand like what choices they're making and why they're making them. Because just to say, hey, it's not profitable, like I agree with everything you guys just said, but I'd like to know more.
I mean, Jeff, I totally agree with you, but my suspicion, I'll say I know I can almost guarantee this is true, is that they have all the levers they need to turn a profit. This is a conscious decision, and it's not a question of where's the money coming from, where is it not coming from, how much are they spending, how much. I think a lot of it's just what are the economic splits, right? You could easily be giving 80% of all ad revenue or all sponsor revenue to the team's owners, right? And say tomorrow, well, instead of 80, I want to give them 50, and now I'm turning a profit, right? And so I think this is very much a conscious decision, and that with a few levers, they could very much be turning a profit. Again, what impresses me is that because I think it's a conscious decision, that's the part that impresses me. That they could.
Okay, fair, but let me. I guess I will break it down. Well, because I think you're right. You probably are right. That split is probably, and to your point, juxtapositioning them versus Activision and how Activision has treated the ecosystem and the owners. It's an interesting point, and maybe you're absolutely right. But what I would like to know, and I think I already know the answer, or you sort of said it, is the pie, if we take revenue coming in from like outside sources, sponsors, streaming rights, whatever, bigger than the amount that's spent from the league, like team salaries, owners, like I don't care how this pie is divided, but is this pie bigger than this outflow?
Do you count,
right? Because then
do you count outflow as like what Riot's giving to team owners or things as a cut of revenue that's coming in for them?
For this, no. I guess I'm basically just saying, like, if instead of Riot being its own company or whatever, if it was like the NFL, like the NFL is obviously profitable, but the league itself doesn't.
If Riot
like
didn't also make
the
the game, they absolutely would be a profitable company in my mind. If that answers your question, right? Like I think if they were a third party operator who weren't picking up revenue in anywhere else, right? They could absolutely make this a profitable scene. And I think I sort of proved my point when I said, could they be charging $50 million for a spot, right? We're talking 3 times what they're selling spots for.
Yeah. And I think Greg actually picked up kind of what I was asking and what you were saying. Like, I think that was sort of what I was getting at, was like, is the ecosystem profitable? And it sounds like what you're saying is yes, which is sort of what matters.
Even if they're not, what's happening in the league ecosystem that's not happening in Overwatch or Call of Duty is the team values are steadily increasing based on their league slot, right? The value of that league slot's going up. And so even if the teams themselves aren't turning an accounting like profit, there's still an increase in value overall. Antonio says Activision Blizzard thumbs down. I agree, Antonio. We're getting to Activision Blizzard news. We're going to get to it. This is going to be a painful one for them. Greg says the profit's right. The real question is, are the teams making money? Yeah, we just discussed that. If we heard all the teams were losing money, we would be more concerned. Yes, except if we knew that all of them were going up in value as a consequence of owning a league slot. Right? If they were all,
or at least revenues are going up. Yeah. Like,
yeah.
They could choose to reinvest it or whatnot. But.
Yeah. Guys, let's talk about Activision Blizzard. And I don't want to get too much on anything politics or anything, sort of touchy here, but, the headline here, Blizzard cancels 2022 BlizzCon amid harassment scandal fallout. The February show was nixed in favor of supporting our teams and progressing development. So that's the first piece of Activision Blizzard news.
Keep going.
I want to juxtapose this against the other, which is interesting, right? Because they're basically saying they're canceling BlizzCon because we're focused on development, right? And then this tweet from Jason Schreier saying Blizzard's co-lead Jen O'Neill just told staff she's stepping down. So now there's only one head of the company. And a lot of this is basically what everyone is saying. And I think, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, on the actual earnings call, they said Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4 are delayed indefinitely. I believe that's the wording they use.
Well, I think they had never actually given a date, but everyone thought they were coming next year. So now everyone actually thought they were coming in 2021. Then everyone thought they were coming in 2022, and now I think when I say everyone, like the investor community, I think everyone now thinks they're coming in 2023.
Okay, so BlizzCon canceled.
Well, that's why I was laughing. I think
Blizzard games not coming out.
Ridiculous.
Blizzard co-leader leaving. Still more harassment issues lurking. Is anyone still Camp Bobby? Please. Why?
Well, now I gotta be. I've been
defend it, Jeff. Defend it.
Well, no. There's nothing to defend on the obviously the issues.
No.
I mean, perspective, but I laugh because clearly, and it's funny when they canceled BlizzCon on the 26th of October, a week before earnings. We probably should have known that they were going to delay the games because they weren't doing BlizzCon because they had nothing to show. But I guess the investor community didn't realize that, and then the stock was down 20% the subsequent week, basically after they delayed these games. So I guess investors don't know everything. But I mean, just in general, the stock is really cheap right now, right? Like it's currently trading.
Is that the
at
bull
a level,
story? That's the bull story.
That
is what you're telling me.
I mean, basically, the bull story now is like you're essentially buying it at the same price as you did prior to Warzone coming out and prior to the pandemic. Like, it's probably unarguable that Activision is in a better place right now than they were prior to the pandemic in terms of player base, just gaming community being bigger, Call of Duty's in a much better place. And like, you pushed out these two games, but you still have them coming. Now, the bear case would be, well, who knows if these games are going to be good, because Blizzard is just an absolute shit show right now, and it seems like they can't really get anything together. So that's kind of the bear case. The bear case. I mean, the other bull case, Bobby's a great capital allocator. They have $10 billion of cash on the balance sheet, and like, I don't know, he could buy back stock at 16 times earnings. He can, go do M&A. Like, there's plenty of assets out there that he could buy. So
yeah,
I still have faith. I still have faith in Bobby, but they definitely need to get their act together.
Bobby needs to go, or Activision Blizzard, I think.
If Bobby goes, the stock goes down 40% next day.
But I have been saying this for years now, and I've been so right, literally at every turn. It's not even fun. I mean, it's disgusting how right I've been. But this company has been rotting from the top for so long. Like, at some point, I told you the shit was gonna hit the fan here. At some point, you can only not make games for so long. You can only be a gaming company with no games for so long. And so we can love Bobby till Kingdom Come. At some point, all of this comes to a head. And at some point, the business has to sort of stand on its own, regardless. And you can do all the financial engineering and stock buybacks and all the clever things you want. Fundamentally, if Activision Blizzard doesn't make great games, in the long run, this company will fail. And I don't know why you would keep a CEO who has led this company through some good times. I could argue it was good times for everybody, and I don't know if he did anything really truly special. He bought a company that was great long before he bought it, and has managed it to a point where they have no games, they have a mass exodus of talent, they have a horrible reputation in the business. I don't know where this goes, and I don't know how you right the ship without getting rid of the captain. To me, I don't see a solution here for Activision Blizzard. Let me just read Chris's comment, because I think it's really smart too. Call of Duty Vanguard likely won't sell well either, with Halo on the horizon. Going to be a long year for Activision Blizzard. Stock will get even cheaper. I tend to agree. I mean, Jeff, you and I had a bit of an argument in Discord, and I'm curious to have it publicly here. Is it? Do you want to buy Activision Blizzard at the current? Activision Blizzard and Roblox have about the current same market cap currently. Which one would you rather own?
Activision.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
You didn't sound too.
It's still, I mean,
confident there.
I think Activision. I think Chris is right. There's going to be more pain, or it's going to be a little bit of like treading water for a while, because there's not a ton of catalysts. Without these games are supposed to be your catalysts, so you might be sitting here in these levels for a while. But over the next probably 2 years, I think Activision stock will outperform Roblox's stock.
And if you had to hold 5 years, does your answer change?
Maybe it does. Maybe it does. I mean, Roblox has a lot of question marks too, right? Like they have slowing user growth. They have, they're struggling to age up a demographic. Their payer metrics aren't great. Like it's not like Roblox is like knocking it sort of out of the park right now. And Roblox, to be totally honest, I actually own both. Unfortunately, neither has been a great investment. But my thought on Roblox is just as a stock, it's, if you look at the multiple you're paying for it, it's pricing in, I think, a lot more upside. Whereas Activision, you're sort of buying it like at the lows to some extent.
Well, here's the thing too. I mean, I feel like Activision, any day they want, can find that next indie, development firm, and like a Splitgate and acquire them the way they did with Blizzard and change their narrative.
Run it into the ground. I mean, it's a great business model.
Use it as a crutch was how I was going to phrase it, but
I think the answer is they do need to make some sort of change in terms of future proofing the business, right? Like I think you're not wrong in terms of the innovations that they have to do, or just creating new games. Having said that, I think that you have to give them historically credit for making a lot of incredibly smart capital decisions and big industry moves. Like you forget, I mean, they bought King for what, 5 times EBITDA? Like literally it is printing almost $1 billion in cash every year. Like they bought it for $4 billion. So
Jeff,
that was a genius move, being ahead of free to play. No, but I'm saying a track record. I'm talking about track record, right? They did.
But the track record is in acquisitions, right? It's in M&A. It's in capital allocation.
Bobby has $10 billion. He can go do that again.
M&A doesn't solve the problem they're in. I don't think really doesn't. Right? The ship's falling apart. Right? Packing on more things isn't going to fix the ship. Like there's underlying problems with the business. There's underlying problems with attracting and keeping talent.
Problems?
Who wants to go work for Activision Blizzard today? Let's start with that.
I mean, they said they're going to spend $250 million to hire a bunch of talented people, and they're trying to hire 50% more females. So if I were a talented female in the gaming industry, I might consider that, assuming they have fixed some of the culture problems, which I think they genuinely are trying to. That's a pretty good amount of money that might interest folks in the industry to go work there. I mean, money speaks.
I think
right?
people more than anything
have very popular franchises that people grew up playing that want to work on.
I think people want to work on games that will see the light of day, and I don't think there's any guarantee of that at Activision Blizzard at all. Right? Like no one wants to go work on the next Call of Duty, like changing 2 things on the map. Like I don't think that's what excites the best talent in the industry.
It's going to come out.
It's so hard. It's just so hard with Activision because I'm kind of with Jeff, where it's like I just feel like at any moment they could turn it around. There's just so many assets there and so many things they could do, like pretty easily and fairly painlessly. We would be having a much different conversation. So for me, it's kind of hard to let go of the ship.
But no, Lindsay, your insight,
it's falling apart, but
your insight's spot on. But it's the point I'm trying to make, which is it's such an easy fix. Change the people at the top who don't understand or who are not equipped to guide the ship through the current issues. They're not equipped. Bobby's not the innovation guy. Bobby's not the gaming guy. Bobby, to your point, is the Wall Street guy, capital allocator guy. That's not what fixes this.
That's who I want running my company. If I own a stock, is the guy who's taking it from effectively, I think it was 80 cents when he took over, to $65. Like they beat the S&P over 20 years. Like that's like Warren Buffett type capital allocation.
He's not going to M&A his way out of this.
Free to play. He was right on mobile. I don't know. They were early on subscriptions.
I will tell you now, because I've been spectacularly right up until this point. this just the Activision Blizzard story gets uglier and uglier over the next 12 months.
Fair. So what's the end game then? Like, what happens to
shareholders get fed up?
continue
Bobby's pushed out nicely, right? He's retiring. He's got his billions. He's going to sail the world on his boat. I don't know, right? Like there's a nice sort of gentle push that gets Bobby out of the way, and they bring in a CEO like Satya Nadella style, someone a bit younger, someone a bit more innovation driven, that can steer this ship and actually get games out the door. Fundamentally, I think they have to go back to being a gaming company, and they have to drop all the other distractions, drop literally everything else they're doing, and continue to put great games out. Otherwise, I don't think the business survives fundamentally.
So you think they put that person in place and then it works? Doesn't work? Like what happens?
I think it takes the next.
They get sold to someone. Like what?
No, I think it's sort of it limps along for the next 3 years, like as this transformation happens. And I think 3 years from now, you would hope to see a different business altogether, right? A renewed, reinvigorated Blizzard that essentially goes back to its roots. No, they don't have to do any of that. That's the beauty of Activision Blizzard, right? There's so much great IP, so much great history in the games that they've made, that like a great Diablo 4 changes everything, right? A Diablo 4 that sets the industry on fire, that everyone wants to play and everyone wants to watch, is transformational, but it's got to be a great game.
But I agree. And that was sort of what everyone was playing for. Everyone thought that was coming next year. But like, why is that? Like, that has nothing to do with Bobby, right? Like if he was bad and not good at his job, he would be telling Blizzard, no, put it out now. Like, I don't care what you have, just get it out. I want my $1 billion today. Like, I mean, what would you say that he or someone else, screw Bobby, whoever, like, let's say, Paul, you're the CEO tomorrow of Activision. Like, what do you do to make that game better? Like, hire a bunch of people, right? He just said he's going to spend $250 million extra dollars, like hiring a bunch of talented people. Like what?
I don't know. I actually don't know enough of how Bobby manages day to day to be critical but I do know that the end result's not happening. And it's not like Diablo 4 is something they announced 2 days ago and they're saying it's going to be another 2 years. We're talking about a game that's supposedly been in development for years now. Right? We're talking cyberpunk level kind of mismanagement. Again, at one point, the buck stops with Bobby. You could say, what is he supposed to do other than hire people? Well,
sure, but you're going to put in another person who has less of a track record, who might be less good. Like, what is the next person? I think what they've done is they've fired the Blizzard heads, right? Like, I would argue that's.
But does Bobby really have a track record of putting out great games? Does he?
I mean, he's been the CEO since '91, so any game that you played, presumably he was, I guess, not the Warcraft ones, because that was
he's also just not. I don't know.
He's not a game developer.
I've always seen him as the Activision guy, not. So maybe he understands the publishing business. Maybe he understands marketing of gaming. There's all kinds of things he's maybe very good at. At the end of the day, if the product's no good. And I think maybe a guy with a more product management background, if anything, is way better than a capital allocator in this situation.
That's fair. I think we've had some comment.
Yeah.
Chris is.
Antonio's laughing at, I think, the Activision Blizzard. Christopher says, gonna hire a bunch of expensive yes men versus visionaries. Not a good look. Chris, you're 1,000% spot on. 1,000% spot on. Chris says 30% of the money came from Call of Duty alone. Jeff, you could have been Bobby Kotick in that spot.
That's very kind of you, Chris. Although I don't think I take it as a compliment in this regard. But
Magic says, agree. The ship isn't falling apart. It's halfway to the ocean floor. I agree with that. That's a correct characterization. Christopher says, Diablo MMO would be kind of sweet. Anything, literally anything. They've had so much time. Anything that leverages beloved IP and a genre that people want to play would be a massive hit for Blizzard. Like it's so hard to fail as Blizzard. It really is. You have to be a special kind of it has to be really truly special kind of mismanagement to run a company like Blizzard into the ground. That I think is his biggest accomplishment. All right, guys, let's I think we've beat up on them enough. No. And in your defense, Jeff, also Roblox was down for 3 days. We don't need to talk about it, but they for some reason couldn't get their servers working for 3 days.
It's actually wild that,
Yeah.
remember when Facebook was down for, or was it Instagram? Like whenever Instagram or Twitter go down
For like a few hours.
for like a few hours, you're like, wow, like the world is over. Like
It
Roblox
was
down for like
6 hours, not
a
a
full
few.
weekend.
Patrick says HOTS MMO. I think you would have a lot of fans in any of those cases. Basically put any IP and then MMO at the end if it's Blizzard, and it's going to be a success. Let's talk about Fortnite, guys, in China. China in the news again. And I thought this was obviously an interesting title, very to the point. Looks like Fortnite China is shutting down. It'll wrap up in November. So supposedly Epic is shutting down Fortnite in China. No one knows how successful it was in China. But after November 1st, you can't download the game. You can't register. You can't play the game. And they did change some mechanics, which I thought was interesting in this article. So like it wasn't even the same game for China, which I didn't fully understand why. And there's actually there was no reason given in the, in however this news story came out. There are rumors that it has to do with China's crackdown, obviously, but nothing concrete that said this is why they're moving Fortnite off of China, out of China. What do you guys think about this? Is this, again, the beginning of sort of a wave of developers, particular maybe Western ones, even though Epic is in large part owned by Tencent, but Western developers moving away from China?
I would love to jump in on this one because initially I thought that this was a huge deal and another kind of hit to Epic. And I thought it was a big sign of the government crackdowns and the effect that they might have. But after some digging, first of all, it's not even called Fortnite. It's called Fortress Night. It's almost a completely different game. They had partnered. Yeah,
it doesn't even mean the same thing.
I know. I don't know. Or maybe it was just Fortnite. I'm pretty sure it was Fortress Night, though. I know it was Fortress.
Sounds right.
So, anyways, so it had a different name. I know Epic is owned by Tencent. They had some type of sponsorship as well with Tencent to try to get this through the regulation. Sponsorship, maybe partnership. I'm not exactly sure what the correct word is there, but the point is they were working very heavily with Tencent to get this passed through all of the regulations that it needed to go through. They changed several of the game mechanics, made it less violent, which I thought was just funny considering Fortnite is like
cartoon game.
Balloon animals. Yeah. And there wasn't really any sign that it had taken up in the Chinese market. So I just don't know that all of these hurdles and all of these barriers wound up being worth it for Epic. And I think when you look at the headline, it seems really dramatic, but then it didn't have a big player base. It didn't have a lot of uptake. They had to go through all these things. Tencent's now in trouble. There's new gaming regulations. Like at some point, you just cut loose and get out of there. So I don't know that this is as big of a deal as it seems at first glance. I don't know that the death of Fortress Night is something that...
Yeah.
But does it start a wave, Lindsay, in your mind, right? Well, do others follow suit now and say, you know what, if it's not worth it for Fortnite, it's not worth it for us? And will it stop developers from going to China that maybe had considered it?
I think it will, but that problem already existed. I don't know that it's lessened or impacted by this at all. Again, as I thought it would be upon first look. But there's so many issues going on with China, and I honestly think that the gaming limitation set for children is a way bigger deterrent or a way bigger barrier to overcome than Epic not being able to be successful in the market to maybe other developers. So there's lots of things happening in China that I think are deterrents at this point. Do I think that this is this particular item is going to be the thing that turns away developers? Probably not. They saw what Epic, billions of dollars company went through and all that they had to do. And it clearly didn't work for them. And it probably wasn't going to work for whatever company wanted to try it next anyway.
Do any of you guys have a thought on like ballpark best guess in terms of how big the Fortnite business in China was as a percentage maybe of their total revenue or something like that? Like, do you think China was 10%, 1%? Like, what kind of order of magnitude here?
I bet it was really small.
Yeah.
And more so also because like with a lot of these agreements, typically, you know, like they might only be getting 25% of the total revenue the game makes because the developer or whatever, the publisher over there ends up taking the remainder because China's essentially run like a monopoly where the only way to get in is to go through a different Chinese, local publisher. Now with Tencent, having such a close relationship with Epic, maybe that's a little bit different. But typically, it's like a 75-25 split towards the Chinese company, not even towards the IP holder. So yeah, I mean, I think when you combine that with the fact that the IP kind of came in late, didn't really get approved for a while, and then it never really took off with the Chinese player base, which had already gotten into other popular battle royales. Like I think the PUBG one was really popular there, and then maybe there's one or two others that I like the China. I forget the Chinese name of them, but Chinese versions of Western battle royales had already sort of taken over the market. And then you also couple it with the fact that the demographics of Fortnite really overlap a ton with this ban of kids playing games. Like it makes a lot of sense given how much resources it probably takes and just like headache internally, to maybe make like $10 million in revenue. Like just doesn't seem worth it.
Yeah, I like both of your points. What I see when I read this, I spot two issues, right? First issue, to Jeff's point, and to Paul's question, Fortnite clearly losing, in that demographic, in that region. And that's just a long road that we've seen Fortnite on the decline ever since it first got pulled from the App Store. And now we're seeing it fail in other areas for other reasons. So I feel like, we don't know what those numbers are, but definitely I think somewhere in that 10% or under range to, where to Jeff's point, the money that they're making is not worth the headache. Separate story, is this a wave? Your other question, is this a wave? I feel like there's enough adult, that children cut off business to continue to support gaming in China, in Asia. I feel like there's so much infrastructure and money also, and it's very much a pay-to-play region, right? With the government, with my prior theory about, well, is this just some type of fine or some type of like, secret handshake kind of thing that we're going to have to, or a storm that we're going to have to weather, or is this sticking? There's so much uncertainty in that region, right? That it makes this whole conversation purely speculative, kind of fun for that reason. But like, I don't think we're going to draw any reasonable conclusion. The only thing I see is Epic still hurting and its most popular title shutting down in one of the most formerly desirable regions for gaming, for esports in the world. And two, like Tencent also hurting as a result. And will they pull back other games? I don't think other games are going to leave, to Jeff's point, the ones that are strong in that region, the ones, the Chinese adaptations of battle royales and the other games that they play. I don't see we're going to see a lot of that. I'm more concerned, the way we beat up on Activision, the similar discussion to be had with Epic. To me, this says more about Epic's business, I think, than it does about, we already know China is like a uncertain place to be right now, and that things are changing every day. So this doesn't surprise me there. What more so surprises me is like Epic's flagship property leaving that region, even though Tencent's their owner, and that's like Tencent's home base. So, what does that say about Epic and where else they're going to be successful, or what Tencent's going to do to pivot out of that situation?
I mean, there's a million conclusions we could draw from that line of thinking, right? Like maybe Tencent doesn't have the pull that we think they have. Maybe, right? Like maybe the relationship between Epic and Tencent is more contentious than we think it is. Maybe, right? There's like a million different conclusions we could draw.
I did preface it by saying that this is totally speculative. Yeah.
Guys, before we continue, I just want to mention, we have a bunch of good stories coming up, but the business of esports, this live stream is supported by YouGov. They're a leading international research firm that supplies the best data on gamers, games, esports fans around the world. If you are looking at getting in the industry, launching a product for gamers, you're in marketing, you work for a brand, you're doing anything in or around gaming, so much of your decision-making process can be made that much better, that much more profitable, really, if you start with great data. And YouGov's connected insights allow you to make really, really smart decisions based on really, really accurate data. So if you're a team, you're a brand, an agency, rights holder, marketing person, any of those things, you should be talking with YouGov. We can help connect you with them. You can reach out to me, to Jimmy, if you're looking for data on the space. You can also visit yougov.com/gaming-esports. I can put it in the chat. There's a bunch of free data there that is definitely worth checking out. But I highly recommend go show them some love. Reach out to them if you're looking for data on the gaming and esports space at all. And please feel free to reach out to myself or to Jimmy if you want to be connected with them. So we appreciate YouGov's support and encourage you guys to reach out. All right, let's talk about YouTube, guys, because YouTube gaming in the news. Two stories here. Why, Jeff? Why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because we're just hitting the greatest hits tonight.
It's the greatest hits, you know?
Which is what Billy Joel should have done in Austin, and he didn't.
For real.
How long did it take him to get to Piano Man?
He did it. Okay,
Took till 9 o'clock.
But he did it at 9 o'clock on a Saturday. Like that was.
Yeah, which would have been good if he filled the hour before that with his other 10 greatest.
He did not play a single
I was
hit
disappointed
until
with
the
Billy Joel.
encore.
I was disappointed with Billy Joel.
You
Still love
You
him, but
both, Jeff.
it wasn't good.
He's still trying to push the new stuff. You got to respect that, right? Instead of just
Okay, I went to
being
one
the
of his
guy who
concerts,
plays
so-
like the same 4 songs that everyone loves, you know, like
He needed to be more like Bobby Kotick. Just give us the hits.
Yeah.
Give us the
no new
hits.
stuff. Give us the old remasters.
I've been to one of his concerts and he specifically said, I play all the old stuff that everyone likes because nobody wants to hear any of the new shit. Anyways, here's Piano Man. That's the Billy Joel I wanted to see.
all right. For those of you who are watching or listening and are totally lost at the moment, we were at, I think I mentioned this, F1 in Austin, and Billy Joel was one of the performers that weekend as part of F1 weekend. And evidently he didn't play the hits fast enough for you guys, so I don't know what to tell you. You can reach out to let him know, Billy Joel at pianoman.com, and let him know to get to the hits faster. All right, let's talk about YouTube gaming, because this one, I mean, is just, again, it's just being right. This never gets old. It's always the same great feeling. And there's two articles back to back here. The first article, let me just put this up here, is YouTube gaming to add gifted memberships and creator tools. The head of YouTube gaming shared upcoming improvements to the platform. So Ryan did a little video where he talked about how they're going to do gifted memberships. They're going to have clips, mod tools, things like that. What struck me was none of this is new because Twitch has been doing all this for a while. But then I thought it was interesting next to this other story which came out this week, which was Facebook gaming surpasses YouTube gaming in views during Q3. Facebook gaming saw an increase of 59%, while YouTube gaming saw a decrease of 32.5% during the quarter.
Wow.
So Facebook gaming actually getting more views, more hours watched than YouTube gaming. Worst management team in all of gaming, or just a bad management team? Like where do we put Ryan and his crew of golfers?
I'm gonna pull a William. Bradley has no comment.
No, genuinely, look, is anyone surprised that YouTube's not living up to what it like? Here's the question. You know you're losing, right? You're not growing as fast as you should, given your Google and have all these resources and have all the audience of YouTube and everything at your disposal. And the only thing you announce are features that Twitch has had for 2 years. Again, is this another like where's the innovation question? Where is the management at these big companies that can drive innovation and not just sort of look at what's happening across the street and copy it? Or do you guys see a different issue here or no issue at all?
34% decline is definitely a big issue, but I feel like with Google in particular, we've seen such disappointment for so long. They've set the bar so low again and again that like I'm more impressed by Facebook here. Like,
well, look at the total hours watched
awesome.
in Q3.
Yeah.
Twitch monster, like far ahead of all the others, and Facebook gaming actually having a larger percentage of hours watched than YouTube gaming. This is mind-blowingly bad, if you ask me. Like, if I'm Google, I'm firing everyone at YouTube gaming tomorrow. Like, how this is embarrassing. It's not just bad; it's embarrassing.
Well, particularly when isn't this the quarter that they made the big moves to get
Tim the Tap Man, and
like I don't know if this is a separate quarter or if that's not reflected, but yeah, that's kind of hard to believe. It almost makes me want to not question the data, but maybe question some aspect of it if it's pulling in, like under a different brand or something. Like it just strikes me as, to your point, like I don't know how that's even possible when they made those big moves this quarter. Like 32% decline is just when the market for streaming viewership is growing. Like that's a massive number to decline.
It's shocking.
I don't know. I have no explanation for that. Yeah. Like if it was like, hey, it declined 5%, you'd be like, oh, okay, whatever. Like that's like you losing a little bit of market share. Like down 32% is like, oh, like did YouTube just like go off for like 3 weeks and like nobody noticed? The servers went down, like that's a pretty shocking number.
But does anyone think it's sort of in bad taste to make a YouTube video about all the things you're announcing that are basically all just Twitch features that have been around for 2 years? Like, I don't know. It's this disconnect from like reality at YouTube gaming that I've never understood. And why they can't see, why it's always playing catch up. The maybe the more interesting question is, how long does Twitch stay ahead? How long does Facebook gaming stay ahead? Like, if all YouTube gaming is going to do is just knock off every feature that their competitor comes out with, maybe the might of YouTube and the weight of YouTube eventually allows them to make some progress.
Well, that's the one thing that's definitely been keeping them in the race here is it's still a Google product and people are still familiar with it. But to Jimmy's point, I think it also says a lot about what Facebook is doing. Clearly, they're working hard and trying to be innovative in this space and trying to take some of that market share away from Twitch. So it not only is it a dig against YouTube, but it's impressive that Facebook has been able to take over some of this market share when they're up against the likes of Twitch and YouTube. They're just much more natural video sharing platforms.
Well, I was going to say, is the story here maybe more about Facebook gaming than it really is about YouTube gaming? Like, should we be giving more kudos to the folks at Facebook gaming? Because that's a pretty major accomplishment.
That was my point, and that was like my first takeaway. As I'm listening to you guys and kind of rethinking this, I'm also kind of drawing a parallel to our Riot conversation. This is YouTube's live streaming platform, right? And I don't want to give too much away from our talk today with Doran Neer, the co-founder of Stream Elements. But they're making a massive push into VOD content and away from live. And that's still YouTube's bread and butter. That's not part of this data, right? This is purely live streaming that we're talking about. And so if you want to talk about the size of the audience for live streamers versus VOD content and what YouTube does do well, I don't know if this is something that they're expecting to lose on, but they're using it to at least get that content or to capture some of that audience or for somehow drive that one part of their business into their VOD. I really don't know. That's something that really just came to mind, but that could be it too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like if Facebook had come out and said, look, guys, we've lost the streaming thing, right? Twitch has won. Facebook's beating us. We're going to focus on VOD. Here's where we're innovating in VOD. I'd be like, I get that. That makes sense. I like this strategy, right? Because they're the 800-pound gorilla in VOD and they maintain their leadership. But they continue to come out pretending like they're innovating in the streaming space. They spend money signing creators. All they've done is copy Twitch features. They've done nothing creative or new or innovative. And they all spend their time patting themselves on the back. And reality is their business if it was not part of Google and it was not part of bigger YouTube, would be a failure. And so it's one of these things where it's like, it feels, I think this is where the animosity comes from. It's just like the strategy feels wrong. And I guess I'm curious what Facebook's doing better, because I also haven't seen like a ton of innovation from Facebook on the streaming front. And I guess I'm curious where you guys think that growth is coming from. They haven't signed big creators, right? They haven't done any of those things.
I mean, did they have the rights to any like exclusive esports content, like some sort of massive esports tournament that drove like a ton of viewership, like League of Legends or World Championship or something? I don't know.
Nothing I know. I don't know if you guys.
I think they're doing really well in more of a just chatting category. You know, we had Clinton Sparks on the show a while ago, for a music producer and a co-founder of Xset, former FaZe Clan biz dev. Clinton's been invited on Facebook Gaming numerous times just to host talking segments, right? Kind of reminds me of, what was that one, Caffeine, which that was kind of what they were leaning into as well. I don't think they did it, or I think they're still around. I don't think they're doing it all that successfully, but you know, I'm looking at this, and you know, we're looking at Google's, you know, the acquisition of Tim the Tatman, which I love Tim. I'm a huge fan of his brand. But if you look at that and you take the names away, this is just something that Mixer did and failed at, right? It was like a huge signing of a big name for a lot of money, hoping that you capture his audience. But you know, that's not really the way you build an audience in gaming, right? It's more about that organic growth. And starting from the ground up. So Facebook, I think, being able to leverage their user base, right? All the people with Facebook accounts or Instagram accounts, and to just capture that audience, or rather to funnel them into a different product, whether that's a just chatting product or something else. But no, to your point, Jeff, it's not like they have exclusive streaming rights of any one thing. I think it's really more so that they have access to that many more people, so they don't need to convert, you know, 10, 20, they just need to convert 1%, you know, 0.5% of who they have available to them, and that's a good business.
If anything, YouTube has been the only one spending all the money, right? They bought the Overwatch League.
Yeah, all these TV rights.
That was a really right decision there.
They did also just make it easier to use it. Like, this sounds silly, but it just, as someone who blogs and checks Facebook regularly, like, there's been just a lot more pop-ups and things directing you to it and whatnot. So,
I mean, yeah, it's like, I don't know. We can move on, guys. I don't know. We beat.
Well, Greg made a good point here. I don't know the answer to his question.
Let me just read some of these comments here. Antonio says, "No one learns from Blockbuster and Hollywood Video." I don't know if YouTube's going the Blockbuster route. YouTube Gaming might, but YouTube definitely not. Christopher says Apple does the same thing with iPhones when it comes to features versus other phones. YouTube will be fine with their other revenue streams. Chris, I wasn't suggesting YouTube won't be fine. I still am going to always point out gross mismanagement of businesses and lost opportunities. And YouTube has every opportunity to be the by far the most dominant player, right? Like in a normal world with great management, the purple here should be YouTube Gaming, in my opinion. There's no reason they shouldn't. They have more resources. They have more tech at their disposal. They have a video, you know, they have all the VOD stuff that helps support them, the millions and millions of people who use the site daily. This is just bad. That's just bad. And I'm always going to point it out. Not to say YouTube won't be fine, but I'm going to point out when things are being done badly. Antonio says YouTube has a superior comment section. Hilarious.
No, we have a superior comment section here on the Business of Esports live stream.
Yeah. Greg says, has anyone heard that Facebook has a significant share in South America? Could this be driving the numbers? Interesting. That is, I don't know. Do you guys know?
I love that thought.
Really in all emerging economies. So anyone that's interested in gaming, it's an easy conversion.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. You know, if you look at Asia and you talk about like Douyu and Humao and all these other competing platforms where Twitch doesn't dominate, why can't YouTube or Facebook go to Latin America or Europe and achieve similar success and get their market share there? So, I mean, just fundamentally, I like Greg's point that maybe that's what's driving their growth here.
Yeah, it could be a geography thing, but again, that's not something that like YouTube can't do, right? It's not like YouTube
Yes,
doesn't have a presence in these places, right? Like
we're past the criticizing YouTube face. We're just praising Facebook, I think, with these.
we are praising Facebook.
Meta gaming.
All right, guys, let's move on to Ubisoft. This is another interesting one. And the headline here, Ubisoft invests in blockchain gaming. Supposedly, according to their, I don't know, Jeff, if you read their earnings report, but supposedly what came out from the earnings report was that they're getting into blockchain gaming. They participated in a funding round for Animoca Brands, which makes blockchain games, including Rev Mosport and F1 Delta Time, where players can collect racing-related NFTs. There's also the Sandbox. So these are games made by Animoca, and Ubisoft invested in this company, and according to this article, seem hopeful about the future of blockchain tech.
Exclusive to the Epic Games Store, since Steam is staying out of it. Wasn't that the discussion from a month ago?
I mean no one wants to play Ubisoft games anyways, but like...
Well, I mean, this isn't so. Ubisoft has always had a reputation for trying that, like they are willing to kind of go in on new platforms and new sort of fads. Sometimes to their credit, I mean, they were very early on the Switch. Like they were one of the few people that kind of like few third parties that really like leaned into it, and I think they had some successes early on with the Switch. They also were, if you recall, kind of the launch partner for Google with Stadia. Clearly that kind of didn't work. They got pretty heavy into hyper casual, like they bought, that into that mobile trend. So like they're willing to dabble in different areas, which sometimes works for them. You could also say that they're not very focused sometimes as a management team and as a business. Like they've tried to do entertainment, they've tried a lot of different businesses that really just like probably aren't core to what they're good at. And that's kind of been to some of their shareholders' detriment at times. But we've talked about NFT gaming and our thoughts on it, so I don't necessarily know if we want to go deeper into that. But it makes sense that they're kind of getting into what is a new big potential trend.
Jeff, you bring up a good point, and Ubisoft's a French company, and I don't think it is particularly French from a cultural standpoint to be this sort of cutting edge, right? Like where they'll dabble in things before some of the other big developers do. I wonder if you think it's a question more of their size, right? Ubisoft is always sort of kind of the third wheel, right? You have EA and Activision Blizzard, and Ubisoft is always kind of the third child here. I don't know if you have a theory there or like why you think they're so aggressive in terms of trying new things, maybe before the others.
I don't know. I mean, it is like a family sort of run. There's like the founders still run it. So maybe there's some element of risk-taking culture because, the founders run it. That could be it. I honestly don't know enough about French culture to know whether, I didn't even know that was like a thing that French people, don't typically do that. So I've learned
it's definitely not as entrepreneurial as like American business culture. Jimmy, you were going to say something.
Oh, just that. I mean, I want to give Ubisoft more credit. They have some great titles under their belt. I'm looking at a lot of these right now. It was one of those names when I was in high school, waiting for a new game to come out. And if I saw them attached to it, that's something that you would get excited about. And so here they're innovating. Like, I don't have any criticism here. I think that they have a strong track record of success under their belt. I think they have a lot of strong titles in their library of content that they could easily apply to a blockchain model if that game called for it. And they're going to try it out here with some of these other titles. And if that's successful, they'll lean into it, I think, with the rest of their catalog. Again, I like Epic I liked Epic's statement. I thought they needed that. I get your whole knee-jerk reaction to that, when that came out, but Epic's going to support it. Ubisoft's going to make the game, and this is going to be a big thing. It's a win-win for everybody that needs a win. These aren't little names and little games that we're talking about here.
Yeah, I suspect we won't ever see anything of any substantial size or success from Ubisoft's blockchain gaming initiatives. I think eventually the technology just gets incorporated again. And I've repeated myself a few times. We stopped talking about blockchain-based games, and it's just part of whatever game they're making.
If it was Google, I'd be like, all right, that's a good argument. They're probably gonna take one step there and 3 steps backwards within the month.
It'll be, Assassin's Creed 75, where you get an NFT of whatever, something, right? And this will be that'll be the integration. All right, guys. One more story, and Wade, you picked the right time to be late to the show, because this is our last story today. It is Netflix games. Chris says, Chris, I'm not going to read this.
Sorry, right. I had to Google that. Now I know.
And so Netflix games in the news, guys. They started their global rollout on Android with iOS on the way, and the rollout includes 2 Stranger Things mobile games. I will just read you the list of the 5 games that they rolled out. Stranger Things 1984, Stranger Things 3 the game, Shooting Hoops, Card Blast, and Teeter Up. If you have a Netflix subscription on November 3rd, you can which was today, you can download all these, and there's no extra charge. It's included with your Netflix subscription. Jeff,
I just don't get this. I don't. Well, I don't get why this is what Netflix chose to do, and they make it sound like, oh, it's so great. If you have a Netflix subscription, you get the games for free. They're mobile games. Who pays for mobile games? Everything in the mobile gaming market is free to play. So like, I'm sorry, I don't understand like why this is such a great value proposition that they're free. Well,
they say specifically that there's not even in-app purchases. So this is more akin to like Apple Arcade offering, probably.
Yeah, which failed. Like nobody cared about Apple, right? Like nobody who plays Apple Arcade.
I mean, the beauty with Apple is they stick with things for so long that nothing really fails, unlike Google, right?
Yeah,
it gets rolled into like something else.
Into oblivion. But I don't know. I guess like, sure, there's no in-app purchase, but like a lot of mobile games are built around in-app purchase, and like that's the progression engine. So I guess it'll be interesting to see, like, are these games going to be super immersive, like awesome core experiences where it's like, oh my God, this is changing the paradigm of mobile gaming. Like, I can't believe this game is free. And I just like, it's sort of.
Do they have to meet that high bar though? It's just like,
in order
it's a freebie included with your subscription, right? Like,
but then who cares? Right?
Well,
like,
will it keep you a Netflix subscriber longer and be more loyal and reduce turnover even a little bit? Like reduce churn even a little bit? Maybe.
If games were what I just said, then yeah, if it was like an amazing game, immersive experience where it's like, okay, this changed my life. I'm now every day going to play this Stranger Things mobile game. That's just not how mobile games are today. Like typically mobile games, people download them and 95% of people churn out within, a day or two. Like that's just the way the mobile market is kind of. So I don't necessarily see that this changes anything for Netflix. Like maybe, yeah, I actually just don't see it.
This is no different, I think, than them acquiring a new show, right? They go out, they acquire some content, and they hope that you continue to see value in your Netflix subscription. Going out and acquiring games like this is literally the same model. I mean, it's basically
so
no
I
different.
See what you're saying, but I guess my question would be, why don't they take the Netflix IP, and if they were trying to make more money, like why wouldn't they just create a mobile game that monetizes and just monetize it that way? Like to me, that's a better strategy than this. Like I don't see how many people are going to say, hey, I'm now not going to get rid of Netflix because I can play these games that like objectively are the exact, like, tell me the titles of those games are not exactly games that pretty much already exist on the App Store. Like I'm pretty sure there's already a Stranger Things mobile game.
But in the same way that a lot of the shows Netflix acquires existed somewhere else before or were created somewhere else. Like what you're asking them to do is two different businesses, two different business models. What I sort of love about this is it's their exact pre-existing business model. And sure, is it kind of lame and doesn't go far enough? we could have that argument, but it's also like by far the most obvious path they could have taken, right? Buy games, include it with the subscription, hope we get more subscribers. And as long as they keep adding subscribers, Netflix is happy. I think where your argument comes into play, Jeff, and where I see a reckoning is at some point Netflix will not be able to add more subscribers. At some point it won't be a churn question anymore, and it won't be a net new question anymore. At some point the question will become, how do we monetize these subscribers better? And at that point you can have all these discussions, but I don't think Netflix is there yet. That's the part of the problem. There's just not a lot of there's not a lot of motivation for them to do anything radical or drastic.
I really
guess
don't see this.
Sorry, Lindsay, go ahead.
I don't necessarily see this as a way of adding subscribers either. I see it more as like a fact-finding mission for how many first of all, how many people are going to take advantage of this? What is the importance of a tie into a show? Because it seemed like some of them were tied into shows and some of them weren't. How active are people on these games? And because to be honest, like Jeff's right, this is just another mobile game when zillions exist. But if Netflix can get a little bit more of an idea of what the people who are going to actually game through Netflix's subscription are like, then they can then use that to create better games and target more people from that audience, thus growing it. So I don't necessarily think that this is like their out of the gate smash hit entry into gaming. I think it's more like, okay, you know, this we rolled this out pretty quickly. We're going to make it free. We're going to see how it works. And then we're going to try other tie-ins. I'm still expecting more like while you're watching things, you can play something kind of deal. So I think this is really just a fact-finding mission.
So Lindsay, I think your point is actually honestly an awesome one. And I think it kind of ties into what you were talking about earlier, Paul. And a lot of times your issue with these companies, these big companies getting into gaming or around gaming, not enough innovation. Where's the innovation? Like I would pose that right back to you. Like, what is innovative about Netflix saying, hey, guess what? We created a mobile game about Stranger Things and it's free.
You're right. There's nothing innovative. There's nothing innovative. You're right. But Netflix's ship isn't burning, right? And they're coasting with a great business, spitting off a ton of cash. And all they have to worry about is not losing subscribers and adding some net new, right? Again, there will come a day where Netflix ship will be burning, right? Where they have 500 million subscribers and adding more is so costly and so difficult that the business grinds to a halt, right? And the growth isn't there and Wall Street gets upset. And at that point, you have to start thinking about how do we monetize our user base better? But when there's no pain, there's no reason to innovate. Right, that's fundamentally it. That's what you should be innovating because, like, if you I agree, but the reality is, you know, where I'm really critical is the companies that are suffering, the companies that are failing, the companies that are going in the wrong direction, where there's real pain and real need to innovate. That's where I'm extra critical because they have to. Right, Netflix doesn't have to. I guess is my point. I agree that they should. But they don't have to. I just think
we'd all be a lot more bullish if this was something like, hey, download this app. You have to play one level. And then based on how you do in the game, that's what starts coming up, you know, like kind of like an immersive storytelling,
sure.
Like meld the game with what's going on the TV. And then your choices change the, you know,
and people aren't going to watch the show though. Like, so Netflix isn't a gaming
it would sort of be both.
But they're
right?
not
like
a
kind of like
company.
a Bandersnatch type thing.
This isn't to lose viewers, and they're not a gaming company. They're not trying to compete.
So then why
with
are they
other
doing
mobile
it?
games. Because it's for the children. These are parents that have 9-year-old kids that are leaving to go play games on their phones or wherever they're going to play. This is for the people that are watching CoComelon and Stranger Things that like, let's keep them under our umbrella for a little longer, get them more familiar, meet with them on their terms. This is, like to Lindsay's point, this is data. This is a step in that direction. Let's see if they actually play it. And if so, we'll create either better games or maybe add immersive storytelling games. This is a data play, and this is not a let's do something completely new and innovative. This is let's just see if these kids, if we can keep them under our umbrella a little longer. Because to Paul's point, they're not losing anyone today. They don't have a pain point. But like these kids eventually might not be, you know, they're using their parents' Netflix subscriptions. They might not get their own. So how do we encourage them to get their own in 10 years? Maybe we add gaming.
So are we
maybe
assuming that these games are for kids? Because
Yeah,
I
Jeff.
wasn't
Think
sure.
of the children. Think
No,
of the
I'm
children.
serious. Like, because mostly the mobile gaming market, typical mobile gamer is like a 60-year-old woman. So like, I wasn't thinking that this was for like my, a 3-year-old kid like who parents just want to hand him a phone and be like, watch Coco Melon. But I could be that maybe that does make sense.
Well, not
I
at
don't
least
know.
with these
That's how
initial
I see it.
titles, but I do buy that point. Let me just catch up, guys, on some of these.
Yeah, we got a lot of good comments. today.
Wade says my reaction was similar. Jeff, I was just like, what? Chris says nothing wrong with a new delivery device for gaming. This is
It's
true.
not new.
Like,
That's the point.
Greg says, isn't the plan for them to start charging $9 a month? This is their attempt to show what they can offer. Greg, I think, and I've said this before, right? You have to justify the price creep. And this is just one of those things that helps them justify the price creep over time, where you build in more value and people are like, well, it's worth $10. It's worth $11. It's worth $13.
Or it's small enough you don't even notice. I don't even notice the price creep. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, is that what I paid last year? I think so. Like, okay.
Carlos says, can Netflix retain a younger generation through offering of mobile games? Yes, Lindsay, check user interest and then invest more cash into cooler games later. I think Jimmy and Lindsay were in agreement on that one. Chris says, Netflix data collection is scary good. They know when you stop watching a movie and use that data to produce titles more apt for their audience. Impressive stuff. Yeah, the gaming stuff could give them just a ton of really interesting data, and I'm curious how they're going to use it.
I just want to say, Chris, Netflix knows what thumbnail will be more likely for you to click on that title. So if you and I are looking at our Netflix, we might have very different thumbnails on the exact same TV show just because it knows that you'll be more likely to click on it if it shows you a certain, actor that you like from other shows. That's how scary good their data is.
That's interesting.
Sorry, Paul, for the comment.
No, it's really good. Antonio says they just need to lower the user count per account. Lower it?
Like less people sharing
The amount of
accounts.
licenses.
yeah.
To increase monetization.
Got it, yeah.
I see what he's saying.
I mean, it's just so
It's an
hard to
opportunity
police.
if they wanted to.
Yeah.
Sure, they could.
Carlos says, but people don't like that kind of change, right? Easier for them to increase it $1 than to make a change like that, I think. Carlos says, then add a legit game or two down the road. Yes, agreed. Jason says, possible they are focusing on developing markets where Netflix has failed to gain traction with lower ARPU. It's an interesting, again, sort of comes back to, is there a geography question here? I will say,
and mobile gaming is in developing markets, so that does.
I don't know if you guys
Android.
take any, derive any conclusions from this, but they tested the service initially in Poland, Spain, and Italy before bringing it to the U.S. today. So, launching the U.S. today, Jason, clearly not focused on developing markets, but maybe there's a long-term vision there.
But to his point, it's on Android, right? They only launched on Android, I think.
For now,
that's
yeah.
by far the global dominant platform.
Yeah.
They say iOS is on the way, whatever that means. Chris says, watch The Great Hack. Okay. I don't know what The Great Hack is.
Well, you
Wade
gotta
says,
watch it.
I was wondering if somehow the
Probably
games...
a porn, knowing Chris.
I was wondering if somehow the games may interact with watching Netflix content. Since you watched season 3 of Stranger Things, you've unlocked a new level.
That's what I mean. Like,
I think that's
innovative.
Wade, you and Jeff are in agreement on that you want to see, and I think that's clever. I just don't know. I don't know if that's definitely not what they've launched, right? Like that's definitely not. If they have that in mind, they didn't tip their hat either, right? It's not like they said, "Oh my God, amazing integration coming." They just said, "Here are the games. It's going to be on iOS soon." Colleen says, "Why Netflix hasn't introduced something as intuitive as Until Dawn is beyond me." Until Dawn? You guys know the reference here? Colleen, I'm curious, what's the reference? Chris says, Telltale Games revival on Netflix. I mean, Netflix bought a developer to release these games. No reason why they couldn't go buy Telltale Games, or at least the games themselves. Antonio says, I use 2 different Netflix, one Paramount, one Disney Plus. I pay for none. Okay. Well, Antonio, we do not condone this on this podcast. but congrats. Wade says the data play is an interesting point. Just people who will try their first game gives them data that they don't have about users. You guys are sort of convincing me here that maybe all of this is a data play all along, right? That maybe none of this has anything to do with gaming and Netflix couldn't care less about gaming. No?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it has nothing to do with gaming, but I think that this is them putting their toe in, and I have a feeling that there's much more interesting and better projects and things coming along. I think this is just an easy way of getting started and getting some info about their users.
Colleen says, I'm mad at all of you. Until Dawn. Well, I knew the game Until Dawn. I just didn't understand the context there. Until Dawn is a story-driven game. The way it plays out is completely based on decisions you make affect the storyline. Yeah, I mean, Jeff, you agreed with that, right? Like something where it's more like choose your own adventure, right? Style that Netflix could probably do very well.
I think
I would also argue that
super innovative. And they've tried that, right? They had Bandersnatch, and if you're telling me if Netflix wanted to make a big statement and be like, we are pioneering the future of entertainment. Like, you're going to be sitting on your couch, you're going to be in our metaverse, you're going to put on some sort of headset, and you're going to basically go on like an adventure in a Netflix game / call it interactive story. Like, to me, that becomes, okay, wow, Netflix is changing the paradigm of entertainment, and that's cool. Netflix putting out a bunch of mobile games that you need to subscribe to them in order to play. It's like the most nothing stupid. Like, what does this do? Besides, I think Lindsay's actually right that it probably is the first step. They're getting data. They're seeing, hey, do people who watch the game, play the game, end up watching this right away? Can we transfer people from one to the other? Blah, blah, blah. So they're getting data. I guess that's fine. But to me, it's just like, it's so blah. Like, there's just nothing exciting about it.
I will tell you, if they had announced a choose your own adventure story-driven game tied with some IP on Netflix, I would have been even more bored than I already am. I would have been like, wow, the 1980s are back, right? Like, choose your own adventure story-driven games are not the hot thing in gaming right now at all, right? And I would have seen that as a backwards move in some ways. And I get how it's a perfect fit with Netflix, but it doesn't mean they should be doing it, right?
They also already did it.
It's not what's in style. It's just not the kind of games people want. And it's a little passé.
It was the coolest thing ever in 2004 when I played Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, and you got to choose your path.
Yeah, so make it better, make it cooler. I'm just my head is exploding right now. Like, they literally built Apple Arcade with 4 games that nobody cares about. Like, how are we bullish? It seems like you guys are all bullish on this. Are any of you think this is going to do anything for Netflix or gaming? If it wasn't Netflix that created this, would we even be talking about it?
No, it's a good point. And I don't think anyone's super excited about this. I just think it's also too early to say. Their strategy in the space isn't clear. If we want to be critical, I think that's where we should be critical, which is, where does this go, right? Okay, we buy it's a first step. It's a prudent one. It's a cautious one. But where does this go? And I think that's where I may end up, Jeff, totally siding with you, is if the next few steps don't expand on this in some meaningful way, then I agree with you. Clearly they have no strategy, no vision for gaming. It's a throwaway. It's, 2 guys in the corner at Netflix that wanted to do something with gaming and got some budget to go do it, right? Who knows? It could be just that. That would be disappointing. Or we could see them spend, $20 billion in acquisitions over the next 12 months and be really serious about the space. Who knows? But it is interesting to see another big player, right, in the mix.
Yeah, and I guess to the point Lindsay made and you're making, it would be smart and prudent if they're trying to collect data to then decide if they want to make that bigger step. So
yeah, look, Paul the Prophet loves big, bold, out there moves with tons of conviction, but I get why a public company like Netflix just doesn't do that, right? But I'm with you that I would have loved something, really that we could have dug into and talked about for 3 hours, and is just so out there and so bold that none of us saw it coming, right? Chris says, quick shout out to fellow GTA RP fan Lindsay for seeing the value of that market. TSM signing Buddha for content this week was a great story for esports, and she called it years ago. There you go. Chris keeping track. Chris keeping score. I love it. All right, guys. That pretty much wraps up this week's live stream. Thank you all. Thank you, Jeff, Jimmy, Lindsay, all of you guys as usual.
That was so fun. Thanks to everyone in chat who really made this such a fun one.
So
especially
fun.
all the people who say they're here just for Lindsay, right, Lindsay?
Yeah, those people. Juan He, number one.
Yes, thank you all of you who stuck around till the end here. I know we ran a little bit long today. I just want a quick reminder, the podcast that drops this week is awesome. Stream Elements is an amazing company, and a lot to learn there, a lot of good insight from Duran there. And just make sure to follow us everywhere, guys, if you're not already. Subscribe to the podcast, obviously. Follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, or Meta now. Everywhere you get Business of Esports content, which is literally everywhere you can get it now. Would love that support. And as always, guys, we do this every Wednesday evening, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Bring your friends, your family, your colleagues. Tell everyone you know. The more, the merrier. We really appreciate all of you being here. And we will see you guys next week.